Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about organizing stuff. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, do you have a system for organizing the things that you learn? Like organizing notes or various useful resources that you find when learning something new and would like to be able to get back to it later. I think that would be an interesting video. Yes, I do. So the way I usually do it is very simple. I create a GitHub repository for everything that I work on, or for any topic that I like to do. Like I have repositories for all kinds of different things. Like if you wanted to example, go and check. I think that's a bit outdated now because I've boiled it down. Like I have repositories for like pure like just things I've been working on. Like in the old days, I usually took like suggestions for people, like the stuff that I was going to work on for my like spaving all the questions that people send me and stuff like that, and topics for videos and stuff like that, or different thoughts I've had related to like things I want to do. Of course, a lot of like if you do code katas, if you do like lead coding or stuff like that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I have a GitHub repo for all those things because I did a bit of that as well. Like I just and then it's the basic product structure. You like if you have like if you do something like say code katas for example, like usually you have different tasks and like the exercises are named something, so I usually just create a root folder for the project and then like a folder with the name of the kata with like and I love markdown is my absolute favorite text format. If you work with me, you will see I use markdown for all the guides, all your onboarding material, because I actually make those. I don't use anything like Confluence or Notion or stuff like that when I actually store it. I always put it in the source and then we port it to that poor platform because Git is a superior system, and this way of working is superior, in my opinion, to everything else I've ever seen. And then you basically just put a markdown file with a description of what the problem was, or like the exercise on the website, and I usually include links in my markdown files to the various resources that I had when I was looking at this problem, so I can get, because the point for me is not to remember every single thing. The point for me is to understand what mindset was I in, and what did I look at the point of doing this thing. And that's why I do link. This pattern works extremely well as well when you're doing like onboarding materials or things like that for your repository on the job. So an example you will see if you work with, if you start working with me, is that when I create different integrations to various systems, what I usually do is that I create a folder, like a folder for the file or like the integration I'm going to make for, like if I create a REST client or something like that. And in that folder will be a small README file, and that README file will tell you which endpoints, which API, where is the API documentation for this integration. So you don't just get a URL, you get a link to the documentation, and I include contact details for the people that you need to reach if that something goes wrong with the API or so forth and so forth, because I've structured my learning resources just as I structure my code. I modularize things into the buckets that where the associations are the strongest. So in other words, if you're working on a lead code problem, for example, I usually create a folder for it and then copy paste, as I said, you copy paste in the description that you had into a markdown file with a link to the original resource or something like that, where if it's to the website, for example, and then you can just start adding files. It's the same thing you do with your source code. Usually you have a root folder, some markdown file with the description of what this project is about, etc., etc., and then you just start listing files. And usually that is enough, because if you want to search for stuff, it's actually it's not that difficult if you give the project some type of name that sort of associates to the thing that you were doing. So if I'm doing machine learning, for example, I usually say machine learning something something, or if I'm doing something with, I don't know, React or JavaScript or something like that, it's usually like something of that flavor. And if I have like configs, as I was saying earlier, like I have snippets, like I have these short commands that I use. Like my favorite short command is my command for inputting a log statement in Visual Studio Code, where I've taken the time to add a little bit of syntax sugar on it so that it prints the like a few nice like these emoji icons, so, and add some coloring codes, and it also gives me a like the file reference and the line number of where I put the log, so that when I log I can see very clearly that okay, this is the log that I'm dealing with, and it becomes easier for me to read when say I do something in Node. And these configs, like I put them all in basically in Git as a folder, either on GitHub if I just want to save it for future references, or I just have it on my local laptop. That's really my entire system. It's that simple. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way that I usually structure my learning resources is with two things: Git and Markdown files. That's my secret. Create a folder for the thing. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be your PowerPoint presentation. It can be your designs or whatever. It's just, I mean, that's what's so powerful about Git. It's a very efficient work system. Like it keeps track of, you can do fuck up as many times as you want and always get back to a previous state. And I do this all the time, guys, where I want to go back and reference what I did earlier and so forth. And so if you just have that pattern, as soon as you start a new project, it doesn't matter what it is, you just create a folder, create and initialize it with Git. And I usually have short commands for like when I do like really quick stuff. I have a short command for just basically staging everything and committing everything in the entire like whatever I did, because I don't care about like revisioning all that in a granular way. I just want a save point for everything I do, and then create a markdown file that you basically just copy paste in everything, like links and references to external resources, or you might have, as I said, like you have a description or something you just want to have for quick reference if you're doing lead code or if you're doing machine learning, or like it doesn't matter what you're doing basically. And then you collect that. It's just your reference document, and you start adding files based on that. And I have tons of this stuff, guys. If you go to my repository now, or my GitHub account, you should see that I have, I don't know, 100, 200, I don't count. I have tons of repos. Most of it is just garbage stuff or stuff that I've made for the channel or stuff like that. But that's the way that I do it. Like I try to not overthink how much I structure these things, because usually I find that it's very rare that I go back and check stuff. But when I do go back and check stuff, I want to just get like a bit of an overview of what was I thinking at that moment, because I won't be able to fully like immediately just okay, understand this is exactly what I was doing, but I need enough references to sort of reverse engineer my thinking process at that stage. It's the same practice I follow when I do when I create documentation for my developers in my teams, where, as I said, I know that the two main things for a software developer to know whenever they're going to figure something out is, number one, is there something here, like give me an example of the code that I need to look at in order to figure out how this thing is working. Number two, tell me about if there's some specific endpoint or something, some other resource somewhere else that's not in the code that I need to know about in order to enhance my, or help me understand what this thing is doing. As I was saying, with API integrations, that's like critical. If you don't tell people where the documentation is or who to ping if they need help with something, they're basically locked down to, yeah, there's a network call over here, but I don't really know what else to do with this thing. And that mindset has helped me immensely. Just as I've said 100 times before, I love step guides and so forth, for example. And I usually use markdown files for this purpose, because they're cheap, super easy. And if you want to make them public, like on a Confluence page or something like that, every single file text editor I know supports markdown. Have a great day.